2021 was a year. It was kind of all over the place. Billionaires went to space, Q-nuts went to Dallas, and the world's cargo ships went nowhere. Texas froze in February, the left coast broiled in June, and the southeast was flattened in December. And the world of true crime was just as active, and not just for us murder nerds and true crime fans. There were a lot of crimes in the headlines in 2021. So, in the time-honored traditions of year-end countdowns, I would like to present an entirely subjective list of the 5 biggest crime stories that dominated the headlines in 2021. Let's get into it. It was really hard to pick just 5. I was originally going to do a top 10, but we'd be here for the rest of our lives. Anyway, on Tuesday, March 16th, just before 5 p.m., Cherokee County, Georgia law enforcement was called for a multiple shooting in the Atlanta suburb of Acworth. There, at Young's Asian Massage, officers found 5 people had been shot. 2 of them were dead on scene. The 3 others were transported to nearby hospital, where sadly 2 of them later died. All of them had been shot in the head. Thankfully, though, right away, the Cherokee County investigators were able to get the surveillance footage from the parking lot. There, they quickly spotted their subject, a white man in a gray and red jacket driving a black Hyundai Tucson. They released the clips of the surveillance footage on social media and asked the public to come forward if they recognized the gunman. It didn't take long before they got a lead. A couple contacted them and said that the man shown on the footage might be their 21-year-old son, Robert Aaron Long. Only half an hour later, while the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department was still interviewing that couple, the Atlanta Police Department was called to the Gold Spa beauty salon for what the panicked caller thought was an armed robbery. No sooner had Atlanta police arrived at the Gold Spa when dispatch received another call just like it from the aromatherapy spa, which was right across the street. At Gold Spa, 3 women had been shot dead and 2 other employees had been shot but survived. At the aromatherapy spa, 1 more woman had been shot dead. Officers immediately noticed the similarities to the Young's Asian Massage shootings, and surveillance footage confirmed that the gunman and his vehicle were the same. Meanwhile, Robert Long's parents told the Cherokee County authorities that his SUV had a tracker on it. This tracker, along with the license plate readers, confirmed that he had been in each of the locations that each of the shootings had occurred. Using the Hyundai's tracker along with his cell phone records, Georgia police were able to finally locate him in Crisp County, which is a rural county about 140 miles south of Atlanta. Georgia Highway Patrol soon spotted his Hyundai on I-75 headed south. But when police went to pull him over, he refused. He led the Georgia State Police on a high-speed chase until an officer executed the controversial pit maneuver, which we can talk about in another video. But thankfully, this time it went smoothly. Once his SUV came to a stop, Long surrendered peacefully. He had taken the lives of 8 people, 6 of whom were of Asian descent, all of whom had been inside Asian-owned spas. The suspicion that this was a hate crime was immediately obvious. The fact that it occurred during a wave of anti-Asian hate crimes across the country only made it worse. Once in custody, Long readily confessed, but he insisted that his crimes were not racially motivated, despite there being several anti-Asian posts on his social media account. But other than that, his rampage came as a shock to his friends and family. He had been a devout member of his local Southern Baptist congregation. Friends and neighbors described him as quiet, very Christian, and big into religion. Shockingly, it was his religious beliefs that formed his motive. That was kind of a theme last year. Anyway, a few years earlier, Long had claimed he was suffering from an addiction to sex and pornography, which is how followers of evangelical purity culture are taught to view any desire to have sex or watch porn. So for this, quote, addiction, he went to Hope Quest, an evangelical treatment facility which claims that watching pornography and masturbating is hurtful to God. Hope Quest also practices anti-LGBTQ conversion therapy, which is strongly denounced by the American Psychological Association. Coincidentally, the facility he attended is less than a mile from Young's Asian Massage. Young claimed that his shooting spree was done to eliminate temptation. This despite the fact that there is no evidence that these businesses had been engaging in anything illegal like sex work. And this is straight from the sheriff's mouth. The fact that he targeted Asian women and Asian-owned businesses, blaming them for, quote, tempting him, does not acquit him of racism. Asian women in particular are subjected to a very specific form of racism, where they are objectified and sexualized because of their race. The shooting sparked waves of protest against the anti-Asian hate crimes across the nation. President Joe Biden ordered all flags on federal grounds to be flown at half-mast. He and Vice President Kamala Harris, who is herself of Asian descent, met with Asian American leaders on March 19th to discuss the shootings. Afterwards, Biden gave a speech condemning the rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans, and he declared his support for the proposed COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, which would empower the Department of Justice to track these kinds of crimes the same way that it already tracks anti-Semitic hate crimes. The bill passed the Senate 94-1 with only Josh "the Fist" Hawley voting against it. It passed the House overwhelmingly, and Biden signed it into law on May 20th. On May 11th, in Fulton County, where Atlanta is located, Long was charged with 19 counts, including murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and domestic terrorism. In Cherokee County, he was charged with 23 counts, including malice murder, felony murder, attempt to commit murder, and aggravated assault. In July, he pled guilty for the 4 deaths in Cherokee County and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His trial for the 4 murders in Atlanta is set for April 2022. Prosecutors there have stated they intend to seek the death penalty and pursue hate crime violations against Long. Most of what we know about 40-year-old Matthew Taylor Coleman is that he was a surfer and seemingly a normal family man. So his wife wasn't worried at first when he suddenly took their 2 children, 2-year-old Khalil and 10-month-old Roxy, from the family home in Santa Barbara on August 7th. After 2 days of him not answering his phone or text, though, she called the police. He was finally tracked down to a hotel in Rosarito, Mexico. Since this now involved a possible international kidnapping, the FBI took over. Surveillance footage was obtained from the hotel, which showed him checking in with the 2 children, then leaving with them in the early morning hours of August 9th. He returned a short time later, alone. The next day, he was located at a border crossing in San Isidro, Mexico. The children were not with him. Around that same time, a Mexican man discovered the bodies of Coleman's 2 children under a bush in a rural area. Both had been stabbed multiple times. This crime itself was shocking enough, but when Coleman told police why he'd done it, it got even more bizarre. He said he'd been enlightened by QAnon and Illuminati conspiracy theories and had come to believe that his wife had serpent DNA. He also believed she'd pass this DNA on to his children and that they would grow up to be monsters. He said he had to kill them to save the world. Well, this was not the first time someone in the grips of a QAnon-fueled delusion committed a violent crime. It was by far the worst. Coleman was charged with 2 counts of foreign first-degree murder of United States nationals, charges that qualify for the death penalty. Despite his confession, he has pled not guilty. At one point, apparently he realized what he'd done because it's been reported that he's called and written to friends and family begging for forgiveness. He was given a psychiatric evaluation which determined that he was fit to stand trial. His court date has been set for sometime in May 2022. And I'm going to make a little bit of a prediction on this one. I think he's going to cop a plea deal. This is because he can't really claim that he's not guilty. He confessed, all the evidence is against him. And he's had a psychological evaluation that showed he was fit to stand trial. So he can't really plead not guilty by reason of insanity. I mean, I think we can all agree that he's probably not firing on all cylinders, but he probably won't fit the legal definition of not guilty by reason of insanity. So I'm expecting that he's just going to cop a plea deal. We'll see. This is another crime that's already been covered extensively. For those of you who haven't been following it, I'll try to summarize the case as succinctly as possible, but that's a hard thing to do, so strap in. So, the Murdaugh family, a century-old legal dynasty in the South Carolina Lowcountry, first came to the public's attention in June when Alec Murdaugh arrived at the family's large hunting estate to find his wife Maggie and younger son Paul shot dead near their dog kennels. Maggie had apparently been shot with an assault rifle, while Paul had been shot with a shotgun. Both had been shot multiple times. But what started out as a tragedy quickly unfolded into this web of mysterious deaths, fraud, and other criminal behavior that has been swirling around this family for years. At the time of his death, 19-year-old Paul was under indictment for the 2019 death of 19-year-old Mallory Beach. He had allegedly been piloting his father's boat while drunk, resulting in a collision with a bridge piling that flung Beach from the boat. Her body wasn't found for over a week. From the beginning, law enforcement was widely criticized for their handling of the case, because it was Alec Murdaugh's son, after all. However, Paul was facing criminal charges in that case when he was killed. Because he's now dead, the criminal case against him has been dropped. But then another bombshell. Investigators working on Maggie and Paul's murders then announced that they were reopening another case of a suspicious death associated with the Murdaughs, that of 19-year-old Stephen Smith. In 2015, Smith, who was openly gay, was found dead in the middle of a rural road with severe head injuries. Despite there being no evidence of a collision at the scene, the medical examiner listed his cause of death as a hit and run, likely from being struck by a truck mirror. No suspects were ever named and no arrests have ever been made. The Smith family believes that the original investigation had been, as they put it, derailed, either by incompetence or corruption or both. Soon after the Smith case was reopened, Mandy Matney of Fitz News revealed that there was yet another death in the Murdaugh closet, that of Gloria Satterfield, the family's housekeeper and nanny of 25 years. In 2018, Satterfield allegedly tripped and fell down the stairs at one of the Murdaughs' homes. At her funeral, Alex set her sons up with a lawyer who was a close friend of his, who told them that Murdaugh's insurance company was going to pay them $500,000 for personal liability in her wrongful death and $5,000 for her medical bills. But 3 years later, they had not received one dime of that money. They retained a new lawyer and through his investigation learned that there had actually been over $4 million in insurance money collected on behalf of their mother's death, money that they had never been told about and certainly never received. So Satterfield's sons announced that they were filing a civil suit alleging a conspiracy between Alec Murdaugh, their former attorney, and others to steal those funds. At the same time, South Carolina law enforcement also announced that they were opening an investigation into Satterfield's death after the Hampton County coroner alerted them to inconsistencies. First, the coroner was never called when she died and no autopsy was performed. And according to the coroner, her cause of death, which is listed as natural, does not align with the injuries sustained in her alleged fall. On October 13th, Alec was charged with fraud over his alleged stealing of the Satterfield sons' insurance payouts. So while all this was going on, let's back up to September 4th. Alec Murdaugh called 911 and was taken to a hospital with a gunshot wound to his head. He claims someone had driven by and shot him in the head while he was changing a tire. He was flown to a nearby hospital where his head wounds were described as superficial but not self-inflicted. But then it was revealed that only days before he was shot, he had been quietly dismissed from his law firm, the one founded by his family a century ago, because he had been caught embezzling more than $10 million. He admitted he had an opioid problem, and as soon as he was released from the hospital, he checked himself into a drug rehabilitation facility. 10 days after the shooting, a man named Curtis Edward Smith came forward to admit that he had been the shooter, but that he had done so at Alec's direction. Alec then admitted that he indeed set the whole thing up and even provided Smith with the gun. He wanted Smith to kill him so that his surviving son, Buster, could collect his $10 million life insurance policy. So Smith was arrested in connection to the shooting and charged with several counts, including assisted suicide, assault and battery, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Smith has pled innocent and has claimed ignorance of Alec's whole plot. However, he was recently charged as a co-conspirator in the Satterfield suit after it was discovered that Alec had written him hundreds of checks totaling over $2 million. Murdaugh turned himself into the authorities and was charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and filing a false police report. He was released on bond and returned to rehab. In December, Alec was charged with 7 more alleged schemes between 2016 and 2020, where he told clients that their settlements had been smaller than expected or that they had to pay some kind of bogus made-up fees. He then allegedly sent that money to a fake account. Prosecutors allege that using this scheme, Murdaugh stole nearly $1.4 million from his clients. The original murders that blew this whole thing open, those of Maggie and Paul, are still unsolved as of the time I'm filming. Alec is only considered a person of interest in that case, though he is facing over 50 other charges, including fraud, money laundering, and forgery. And if you're interested in this case, I highly recommend Mandy Matney's podcast, the Murdaugh Murder Podcast. She's an investigative journalist who's been covering the Murdaughs for years, so I'll put a link to that in the description. Editing me coming to you just as I'm editing this video. Mandy Matney from Fitz News has just reported that South Carolina law enforcement has discovered forensic evidence specifically tying Alec Murdaugh to the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh. They haven't released what that evidence is. There haven't been any charges released as of this moment, January 5th, 2022, but this is definitely a big development, and I'm sure everyone is going to be watching this. So I just wanted to include this because it was a major development. This case broke into the public eye on September 11th when Gabby Petito's parents reported her missing. The 22-year-old free-spirited Long Island native had left on a cross-country road trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, in June, documenting their #vanlife adventures on social media. But after August 30th, there were no more social media posts and she wasn't responding to calls or texts from her family. After over a week of trying unsuccessfully to contact Laundrie or his family for any information, Petito's parents reported her missing. That's when a series of disturbing facts came to light. First, it was discovered that Laundrie had driven Petito's van back to his family's home in Northport, Florida on September 1st, alone. Neither he nor his parents would answer any calls from Petito's family, and when police attempted to question them, the Laundrie family referred them to their lawyer, as is their right. As the search for Petito gained nationwide and even international attention, more information turned up about the last few weeks of Petito's life. Body cam footage, along with recording of a 911 call from Moab, Utah on August 12th, revealed that the couple's affectionate, happy social media image was hiding the truth, that Laundrie could be controlling and physically abusive. Almost 2 weeks after that, more witnesses would describe Laundrie acting in an angry manner towards Petito, creating a scene in a restaurant in Jackson, Wyoming. This altercation would be the last time Petito was seen alive. As the search for Petito continued, a small crowd of protesters installed themselves in front of the Laundrie family home, demanding to know where Gabby was. Then, on September 17th, the case took a sharp left turn when the Laundrie family called the police wanting to talk, but not about Petito. According to them, Brian had been missing since the 14th. They said he'd driven into the nearby Carlton National Preserve to go hiking, but never returned. His parents said they went to look for him, but only found his silver Mustang parked on the road. Rather than calling the police right then, they instead drove the Mustang back to their home, waited a few more days, and then called the police. A massive search was launched in the Carlton Reserve, an almost 25,000-acre wetland which is home to snakes and alligators. The case got even more carnival-like when celebrities got involved. Reality TV star and former bounty hunter Dwayne Chapman, also known as Dog the Bounty Hunter, vowed that he would find Laundrie. Victim rights advocate and host of America's Most Wanted, John Walsh, also chimed in to give his theories about where Laundrie might be hiding. Spoiler alert, they were both wrong. Meanwhile, out west, the search was still on to find Petito. The people who did the most to help were other travelers, people who had heard of the case through the news or social media. One couple told police they had picked Laundrie up on August 29th while he was hitchhiking in Coulter Bay, Wyoming. They said Laundrie told them he had been camping at a site outside the Grand Teton National Park near the Snake River. But once Laundrie found out the couple was going to Jackson Hole instead of Jackson, he got really upset and asked them to pull over. He got out near the Jackson Dam. Another woman reported that she picked Laundrie up not far from the Jackson Dam that same evening and gave him a ride to the Spread Creek Dispersed Camping Area, which is near the Grand Teton National Park and the Snake River. She said she found it odd that he didn't want her to take him to this campsite, but only to the entrance of the camping area. Then the biggest break came when another couple who was traveling through the Spread Creek camping area with their dash cam rolling noticed a white Ford van with Florida plates parked on the side of the road. These tips proved invaluable in narrowing down the search area. Just 2 days after Laundrie was reported missing, Petito's remains were found in Bridger Teton National Forest in Wyoming near the Spread Creek Dispersed Camping Area, not far from where her van was parked in the dashcam footage. An autopsy would later determine that her cause of death was strangulation. Laundrie was not named a suspect in her death, but only a person of interest. However, a federal arrest warrant was issued for him on September 23rd for using Petito's bank card to withdraw cash and make purchases of about $1,000 after her death. So now the search for Laundrie was national. Then on October 20th, Florida officials announced they'd found skeletal remains in the Carlton Reserve. They said they believed that they belonged to Laundrie based on backpack, notebook, and other personal items that were found near the remains. Dental records and DNA tests would confirm that the remains were those of Brian Laundrie. Later, an autopsy would determine that he had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At that point, many people felt like the sad saga of Gabby Petito was finally over, even if it wasn't the ending anyone had hoped for. However, as of the time I'm making this video, lawyers for Petito's family have stated that prosecutors are considering charging additional people besides Laundrie for her death. Now, before I get to what I believe is the biggest crime of 2021, I feel this list wouldn't be complete without this case, so this case is the gift that keeps on giving. It's going all the way back to 2019 and involving the deaths of at least 4 people close to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. At the beginning of 2021, the Doomsday couple were already facing charges of destruction of evidence after Idaho police found Tylee and JJ's remains buried on Daybell's property in June of 2020. In May of this year, both Vallow and Daybell were charged with the murders of Tylee and JJ, as well as Daybell's wife, Tammy. The couple were both charged with first-degree murder for each of the children and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder against all 3 victims. Daybell was also indicted for insurance fraud in connection with Tammy's death, and Vallow was charged with grand theft for continuing to receive Social Security benefits on the 2 children after their deaths. Then the case took a stranger turn. On June 8th, Vallow was deemed mentally unfit to stand trial by an Idaho court. She was committed to a psychiatric facility to undergo restorative treatment, after which she'll be reevaluated. Then, just 3 weeks after that, Vallow was indicted by the Maricopa County, Arizona District Attorney for conspiracy to murder her ex-husband, Charles Vallow. Charles had been shot and killed, if you remember, by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, in what had been deemed self-defense at the time. Then in November, police in Gilbert, Arizona made a recommendation to the DA there to bring attempted murder charges against Vallow and Daybell for the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. Prosecutors in Idaho have set Vallow and Daybell's trial date for 2023, but there's no word when Arizona plans to try them for their crimes there. So now, without further stalling, I give you the biggest and most controversial crime of the year. First, if you're going to comment on this story and try to claim it was like a false flag, or it was really Antifa, or it was really just a peaceful tourist visit, or whatever bullshit excuse is making the rounds, just... ...2021 started off really bad. On January 6th, many of us watched in shock and horror as a mob of about 8,000 people, whipped into a frenzy by then-President Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and others, descended on the suspiciously unguarded Capitol building in Washington, D.C., attacking officers, breaking windows, and sending lawmakers fleeing for their safety. It was the first time the Capitol building had been attacked since the War of 1812. During the hours-long attack, 140 police officers sustained injuries while trying to defend the Capitol, and 5 people died. Many officers suffered PTSD from that, and 4 took their own lives in the days and weeks afterwards. As of the time I'm filming this, 17 officers are still out of work due to the injuries they sustained that day. But despite the severity of this attack, very few people were arrested at the scene. The crowd was kind of just allowed to wander on home. But the FBI did launch a criminal investigation, one that would turn into the largest criminal investigation in U.S. history. The investigation, which is still ongoing, encompasses millions of social media posts, pictures, and videos, nearly 250,000 internet tips, and thousands of hours of body cam footage, along with the location history and data for thousands of devices that were present inside the Capitol that day. Now, because we're not dealing with the most sophisticated criminal minds, many of the rioters posted pictures and videos of themselves committing the crimes. But in order to identify other suspects, agents have been poring over surveillance and body cam footage. Their most effective investigative tool so far has been social media. They shared images of the rioters asking the public to come forward with any information that could identify them. And the public stepped up. Some recognized a relative or coworker in the surveillance images, and others reported that a person they knew had openly bragged about being in the Capitol that day. As of the time I'm making this video, more than 700 people from 50 states are facing or have faced federal charges for their roles in the January 6th attack. The most common charge has been knowingly entering or remaining in a restricted building without authority, a kind of catch-all count for trespassing on restricted grounds. The second most common charge filed is disorderly or disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds. A few have been charged with assaulting, resisting, or impeding police officers. As of right now, only a few of them have stood trial. Over 100 of them have already pled guilty. Most of them have been given relatively light sentences like probation or just a few months in jail. One notable exception is that of New Jersey gym owner and former MMA fighter Scott Fairlamb, who was handed down a 44-month sentence for attacking several police officers. Besides the criminal investigations and prosecutions by the FBI, members of Congress launched their own response to the attack. In the immediate aftermath of January 6th, the House of Representatives impeached Trump again, this time for inciting the insurrection. But as in his first impeachment, he was acquitted by the Republican-controlled Senate. In late May, the House passed a resolution to create a bipartisan commission to investigate the events of January 6th, similar to the commission that investigated the September 11th attacks. All the House Democrats and 35 House Republicans voted for it. However, in the Senate, Republicans, many of whom have publicly praised and defended the rioters, blocked the bill using the filibuster. So Nancy Pelosi, in her role as Speaker of the House, created an independent select committee to, quote, investigate and report upon the facts, circumstances, and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack upon the United States Capitol complex, end quote. The committee is composed mostly of Democrats, but Republicans Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger also serve on it. At the time I'm filming, the Select Committee is still questioning witnesses and others who might have been involved in planning and executing the attack. They have subpoenaed top Trump associates and advisors, as well as leaders of some extreme right-wing groups such as the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. Most are cooperating with the committee, but a few top Trump advisors, for example Steve Bannon, have refused to comply with subpoenas and have been referred to the Department of Justice. So that's about it. I'm interested to hear what you think about any of these cases, or if you think I left something out. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Happy New Year, Darklings!